So we're going to talk about team teaching now, which really isn't on the list of research and inquiry activities, but we feel is something that actually has a lot of potential to lead on to some very rich research and inquiry activities. Obviously, observation of an experienced practitioner is a bespoke research and inquiry activity. So we were just thinking about doing a bit of discussion around team teaching and how to get the best out of it from a research and inquiry perspective. So in the Clinical Practice Guide, we give examples of planning and teaching alongside an experienced practitioner as being useful to the student teacher, and planning and teaching alongside another student teacher as being potential activities for team teaching. And we'd like to draw your attention back to the Deans for Impact paper, the deliberate practice paper in relation to this, because there are some principles here that are going to be certainly very influential and important for student teachers to get the most out of team teaching. So firstly, it's really important that team teaching doesn't become simply a divvying out of responsibilities and apportion timings as a tick box of team teaching done. It needs a more deliberate approach whereby the student teacher has specific goals that they're working towards, and the portions of the lesson that they're teaching are divvied up accordingly and are tailored towards supporting that student teacher in being able to achieve said goal. The really powerful thing about team teaching with an expert teacher is that they are able to potentially coach that student teacher during the lesson in the moment and give them immediate teacher feedback that could help them to refine their practice in the moment as well, and could indeed lead on to some really interesting professional dialogue and reflection afterwards that could really help them and could also result in their own reflective entry in their Pebble Pad, which moves this into an area of research and inquiry.
So it's really important, just on a really pragmatic level, to remember that team teaching needs planning as well as individual teaching needs if it's going to have the impact that it could potentially have. And it's really understandable that quite often a student teacher will see a team teaching lesson as something where they don't, it's a break for them from doing all that difficult lesson planning. It's also very easy for it to kind of drop off people's to-do lists. But if the co-planning goes beyond that stage of you do the starter and I'll do the main bit and you do the plenary, through to something much more kind of deep and rich and useful, it can have some really positive effects for both parties. For a student teacher, for example, team teaching can be useful, obviously at the very early stages when confidence might be low, but also at the stage where they want to be looking at some slightly more advanced things. So, for example, if you're giving them feedback that their questioning needs to be more rigorous, or some other aspect of their assessment for learning needs a little bit more work, as their team teaching partner, you could help them address that by reducing the mental load on them, by allowing them to temporarily outsource some of those nuts and bolts, perhaps some of the behaviour management aspects or some of the logistical aspects of the lesson, so it kind of clears a space in their head to allow them to think explicitly about questioning or AFL or some sort of differentiation or something like that. Otherwise, we're waiting for the student teacher to master all of those other things to the extent that they can clear the space in their heads before they can really make any progress on it. So it allows us to start addressing more bits of a teacher's practice at an earlier stage. For you as a teacher as well, this could potentially be a really nice thing for you to do. If you've got that relationship with your student teacher, which often will come with time, sometimes you'll click straight away, sometimes it'll take a bit longer for you to gain one another's trust. But if you've got something you really want to experiment with, if you want to freshen up your practice or try a new topic or a new teaching approach, having that extra pair of hands and eyes and an extra brain, a critical friend, while you teach that experimental thing, maybe giving you time to step back a little bit and observe and maybe watch from the back, it can perhaps give you the confidence and space and time to try something new in your practice as well.
So the key messages when it comes to team teaching is make sure it's rooted in a specific goal or need, that it's sufficiently focused, that there is high quality feedback attached to it, and that it's not seen as a bolt-on, that it's actually seen as a fundamental aspect of moving student teachers forward and indeed your own practice.